All across the world, automobiles have been the culprit of much of the air pollution and global climate change that exists. Cars and trucks on the road are responsible for much of the world's carbon emissions, and the resulting heat is trapped in the atmosphere, causing declining health and rising temperatures. Specifically, the expanding and rapidly urbanizing city of Charlotte, North Carolina, has felt the effects of vehicle emissions as a result of the car-centered city that it has become. In fact, according to the American Lung Association, Charlotte ranks as the 41st most polluted city in the nation. With the number of cars on the road increasing, particulate matter and carbon polluting the air is drastically increasing, with effects being felt among vulnerable populations. If there is no change to be made among cities, the nation could be looking at declining health among much of the population. In this case study, I will analyze the ways in which the declining health of the planet as a result of vehicle emissions directly correlates to tragedy of the commons, environmental justice, and political ecology. I will also seek to explain why and how these issues occur and what groups of people are affected the most. Lastly, I will explain what steps and procedures can be followed to mitigate the effects of the resulting environmental and social damage. Automobile emissions are the result of car-centered cities in which people are reliant on personal vehicles as their main form of transportation. However, a majority of the population using personal vehicles are those of a mid to high income group who are driving for personal and job commuting. In a city like Charlotte, North Carolina, people without their own vehicles are left with few options for transportation. The public transit system is lacking and forces many people without cars to either walk far distances to either public transit stops or their destination. The city's abundance of highly trafficked roads and lack of pedestrian sidewalks away from streets means people walking right along busy roads. Close proximity to congested roads can mean 30% stronger exposure to particulate matter than background areas. Environmental justice, as described by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, requires that no group of people should bear a disproportionate share of the negative environmental consequences resulting from industrial, governmental, and commercial operations or policies, and calls for fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people regardless of race, color, national origin, or income with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. In Charlotte, the populations forced to walk to their destinations are those who spend the most time exposed to the air and the pollutants in it. This group of people are not causing the problem, and yet they suffer the most consequences. These vulnerable populations are left at risk for respiratory diseases such as asthma, bronchitis, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, pneumonia, and upper respiratory infections. This definition of environmental justice highlights the fact that environmental injustice does take place here, due to the fact that a group of people do bear a disproportionate share of the environmental consequences from the pollution. From an essentialist point of view, a commons can be described as a large-scale environmental or social system consisting of natural and cultural resources and ideas, the benefits of which are readily accessible to all, and thus prone to misuse, underinvestment, and free riding. The individual actions of a population lead to unintended consequences, and to one person their individual behaviors may not seem detrimental in the long run. However, when added to millions of other people's same behaviors, the problem is escalated. In Charlotte, North Carolina, the freeways and roads are the commons being overused. When used properly, the freeways are efficient and harmless. However, when they become overly congested from too many people trying to use the resource, cars sit idling in the road, emitting harmful chemicals. According to the Union of Concerned Scientists, cars and trucks account for nearly 1/5 of all U.S. emissions, emitting around 24 pounds of carbon dioxide and other global warming gases for every gallon of gas. In comparison, 66% of Mecklenburg County's ozone-forming nitrogen oxides in 2014 came from on-road mobile traffic, including cars, motorcycles, trucks, and buses. Charlotte governments continue to expand freeways to try to lower the congestion. However, this will only encourage more people to take advantage of the resource and ultimately lead to more pollution. It is the power over resources that determines exactly how the issue of air pollution is handled. Power in society is typically determined by one's social or political status. For example, those in a low-income population are less likely to have power over their environment and its resources than those of a higher income. This concept also directly correlates to the idea of intersectionality, which explains how a person's social or political identity determines the discrimination or privilege they receive. In the study of political ecology, the most important questions to ask include who has the power to benefit from change in the environment, as well as who has the power to oppress others with environmental costs. In Charlotte, almost every decision regarding transportation in the city is made to satisfy those who bring the most value to the economy. For example, better public transportation systems have been constructed right through some of the wealthiest parts of town, while the people who need it the most in West and East Charlotte are left high and dry with an outdated bus system. Also, the city has expanded freeways, improved roads, and added walking paths to wealthy parts of town. Meanwhile, West and East Charlotte infrastructure is falling to pieces with no help from the government. In relation to a case study looking at inequalities based on urban tree canopy, the author states that increasing privatization of urban environmental management under neoliberal political economy is suggested to intensify inequity in the availability of resources such as urban trees. This example of a similar situation emphasizes the fact that the inability of a particular population to influence decisions or have economic power consistently leads to inequity and environmental injustice. Overall, the rising threats of air pollution, both globally and at a local scale, must be addressed to mitigate climate change, declining health, and environmental injustice. In order to accomplish this, there must be some kind of incentive for people to find alternative forms of transportation. For example, implementing tolls on overused roads and freeways may discourage drivers from using them. Also, modernizing public transportation and dismissing the stigma associated with it may influence current vehicle users to make the transition to efficient transportation. At a more technical level, creating stronger policies and regulations on vehicles can drastically decrease the amount of emissions cars release. This can also mean accelerating the movement on electric vehicles and incentivizing more of the population to purchase these automobiles. Lastly is the importance of local knowledge and awareness. It will be important to educate and inform vehicle users of the consequences of their behavior and show them how many people are suffering as a result. Maybe then people will begin to understand the importance of not thinking as an individual, but rather as a part of a bigger interconnected community.